Rilke said, "The purpose of life is to be defeated by greater and greater things." This may sound a little, defeatist, but what he means is that in order to fulfill our potential, to see what we're capable of, we need to face those challenges that seem insurmountable, and keep facing them until we overcome them. And then with the grit that we have obtained overcoming that challenge, we move on to the next bigger challenge, and so on and so on. This isn't an easy philosophy to adopt, especially given the hardships of life in this increasingly difficult and confusing world that we've created for ourselves. But how do we know who we really are or what we're really capable of unless we face life, face our challenges, and choose not to let them own us, but to keep pushing forward, to keep getting stronger and more determined until we own them? You're listening to Conversations on Living, a podcast all about life and how to live, and also how to live well. Exploring the 4 P's of peace, potential, purpose, and finding our place in the universe. Last week we spoke to professional ultra runner Kieran Alger in the first of a 2-part podcast about ultra running, or to be more specific, about how we can all go ultra in our own lives, how we can go beyond the limitations of the normal, push through the improbable, and make the seemingly impossible possible. And whether it's running, whether it's our careers, our relationships, our pastimes, or our long-held yearning for something more, there are lessons to be gained about what it takes, the grit required, and how, if we dig deep enough, we are capable of achieving much more than we give ourselves credit for. Last week, we talked to a professional who runs ultramarathons for a living and then writes about it. Today, we're talking to someone who's just completed their first ultramarathon to get a first-timer's perspective that might be a bit more relatable to those of us who are closer to the sofa than to the ultra. Amanda Eatwell is a photographer that I met when we were both members of the London independent photography community. In this podcast, we talk about setting small goals on the road to bigger ones, and about how doing gritty things gives you the grit to face tough challenges in other parts of your life. You can find out more about Amanda and her photography at www.amandaeatwell.com. And before we get started, just a shout out to our friends at Headliner. Headliner is the service that I use to promote this podcast. I use it to create waveform graphics that I share to social media. I'm sure you've seen what I'm talking about. Headliner is by far the easiest and most powerful way to make them, so if you host a podcast, check them out at www.headliner.app. If you enjoy this episode of the podcast, you can find more wherever you get your podcasts, or at conversationsonliving.com. That's where you can also find out more about me, my writing, my books and meditations. And while you're there, you can sign up to my incredibly infrequent newsletter, which will also earn you a copy of my latest book, Shine Manifesto, completely free. Or alternatively, you can buy it on Amazon or any good book retailer. And if you want to continue the conversation, head over to the Facebook group. Just search for Conversations on Living and join the Convo crew. And if you like what you hear, please rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends and get them to tell their friends, their grandparents, your grandchildren, your goldfish, the postman. Tell everyone, tell the world, because it all helps to spread the love. Now, enough of that jibber jabber. Let's get into the second of this 2-part conversation all about going ultra with me and Amanda Eatwell. All right, so Amanda, thank you for coming on my podcast. So last week I had a conversation with Kieran Alger, and he is for want of a better term, he's a professional ultra runner. So he writes about, he's a journalist by trade, but he writes about his adventures ultra running, and he's kind of made a life around this. And it was fascinating conversation, and really insightful into the kind of psychology behind it. But I felt like it's all very well having these conversations with people who do this stuff almost professionally. But what would a kind of normal, in quote marks, normal human being have to do to become an ultra runner? And then I saw that you'd just done your first ultra marathon, and thought I would reach out to you to kind of get a first timer's perspective on that journey, if you like. So just because Zoom is being weird and we're cutting each other out, I'm going to hand it over to you to start with, and then we'll pick up in a minute. So just to begin with, what motivated you to do your first ultra marathon?
Well, I ran a marathon about 5 or 6 years ago. I think it is 6 years ago, maybe now. And after that, someone I went to school with made a comment was actually on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook anymore, but when I was, this guy I went to school with is a big runner, keen runner, and he saw that I'd run a marathon, and he said, Amanda, I think you should do this, which is called the Ridgeway 40. And it is traditionally a walk, a 40-mile walk along the Ridgeway path, but they allow runners, and he does it fairly regularly. He even does a night one that I think's like a lot further than what I did. So he put that little thought in my head, and it stayed there. Didn't do much with it, but I thought, okay, I've run a marathon. What could I do? Not what could I do next, but I thought, I've done that now. There might, maybe I will do this, and it just stayed there for actually a long time. As you can see, if the marathon was 5 or 6 years ago and this was this summer, then it was due to happen last year, but because of the pandemic it got cancelled, last year's event. And it's normally run in May, but they ran it in August, so it was a lot hotter, and well, actually it was perfect temperature, but it was hotter than it would have been in May, and it was so overgrown, like some of the areas that we ran through, because some of the regular runners were going, I don't recognise anywhere because the brambles were sort of all around, but that was only in a short patch. So yeah, what brought me to it was this guy Dwayne just saying it, like, I think you should try this. And yeah, I finally tried it, because why not?
That's interesting because, and I need to. One of the things about podcasting is you start to notice all the little ticks that you have as a presenter. And one of the things I do all the time is when I'm thinking about what I need to ask next, I say, "That's interesting," but it really is interesting. But I remember Kieran, when he was telling me about his motivations for getting into it, he'd just done a marathon as well. And he was sat outside a pub smoking a cigarette and drinking a pint. And someone said to him, you can do this faster, don't you? And that put the seed in his head. And that's where that seed stayed. And it's kind of this thing. It's like, yeah, I have achieved this now. And I mean, you ran the marathon. And you've done lots of other things as well. You've done kind of boxing yoga, is it, or boxercise or something like that?
Yoga, but I have had a boxing fight in between, which was definitely not on my agenda. So what's happened by no planning is it seems like I do an event now every 2 years, because I did the marathon, or 2 or 3 years, did the marathon. I think that was 2016. Then I did the fight in 2018, and then I would have run in 2020. But so maybe what we're looking at 2023, I'll need a new challenge. But I don't know what it is. I like building up to an event. I find that that's something I really enjoy. Dedicate some time, do the training, know that you've got better, and then perform. Suppose.
That knowing you've got better. I mean, were there ever any doubts in your mind that I might not do this, or were you like, yeah, I'm going to do it from the start?
Once I'd said it, once I'd decided, I don't very, very rarely give up on something I've started, and that isn't always a good thing. But I think with sporting events, it is a good thing. So yeah, once I'd decided, and especially once I'd said it to some people, then I feel like I'm committed and I have to do it. Yeah, there's not a lot that would stop me. Sorry.
Was there a kind of like, oh no, I've kind of made my bed now, I need to lie in it. Oh God, what have I done?
A little bit. Maybe sometimes in training, when you're not that far into the training and you think, geez, that 10 miles was hard. How on earth am I going to do 40? But because I've trained before for these other things, I do believe that I'm capable of stuff, without being, I'm not being showy. It's just, if you start believing that you can do things, then I do think you can do things. A lot of achievement is by believing you can do it.
What was the kind of first thing that you did? Like, you've done all these kind of series of personal challenges. What was the first thing you did that kind of clicked for you, do you think?
The marathon was the biggest event probably. I've competed in a few things when I was a kid, but I'm not actually naturally competitive, which is why I think running suits me, because I'm just competing with myself and trying to improve for my own, my own benefit. Um, but yeah, um, sorry, I've forgotten the question.
No, I was just wondering where that came from. That kind of knowing that I can do something, and that kind of understanding that when I push myself, I can achieve those goals. Where was the first time that kind of popped up?
Um, could have been years ago, like might have been at school even. I I don't know. I'm not sure is the
Yeah.
answer.
Did you ever find, like, when you were out, and I certainly found this with Kieran, he's done like the Marathon des Sables, where you're running 7 marathons in 7 days across the Sahara Desert, and
Yeah,
you're alone just for mile after mile after mile. Do you ever find you're kind of working things out sometimes, and you're just kind of there with your thoughts and with the rhythm of your body and that kind of thing?
definitely. That is one of my main interests in running, because I mean, I probably have been running now fairly regularly. I don't do it all the time, but fairly regularly for about 10 years. And that was thanks to the recession in 2009, because I was going to a boot camp class once a week and a yoga class once a week. Then I lost a lot of work and couldn't afford it. But I'd found out during this boot camp that I could run, without it being too much of a hassle. So I thought, running's free and convenient. You just put your shoes on and you go. And that's how I got into running, because it was a reaction to circumstance. And then I thought, I actually quite like this. So yeah, it's been a part of my life for a long time now, and I think I get a lot out of running, for sure, regardless of an event. I don't feel the need to keep doing events, but I do feel the need to always run. If I haven't taken a run for a week, I probably feel now like I need to just go and release some energy.
Is it like a kind of release valve for worries and stress and kind of the weight of the world, or the weight of daily grind?
Well, I can pretty much guarantee, I mean, especially from my perspective, I hear a lot of people don't like running at all. I always feel better after a run, even if I haven't felt especially bad before going. But yeah, it clears your head. For me, it's a place to think. Yeah. And set goals. I don't think I did it as much during this training period, but I definitely done it in the past, where I use analogies. So if there's a tree 200 yards ahead, I'll say, right, if I get to that tree, I can do this, in my real life. Like, okay, that means that I can, and then you just carry on.
Okay,
Tick.
so it's kind of like saying, if I can get to that tree, then I can have that conversation at work, or if I make it another mile, I can save £1,000 for my summer holiday. Or
It'll be it was that easy, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a positive, something that I get positive results from. And you know how you translate things from one area of your life to another. So it's just doing that really. Yeah, I
There's something
think.
really interesting in that. There you go. That's me saying really interesting again. I'm going to have to work on this for anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I recently had some knee issues, and I thought the problem was my knee, and it turns out the problem wasn't my knee; it was my shoes. So I was running imbalance, and then it turns out, to fix that, it's not that I need to fix my knee; I need to fix my glute muscles and other muscles around my leg. And it just made me think, it's like we go running to deal with issues that are popping up elsewhere in our life, and it's like, we're under a lot of pressure day in, day out. Life isn't easy. We've got to pay the bills, yada, yada, yada. And then we find something like this that is a way of kind of just getting all of that out of our heads in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It lasts, I don't think you just get that feeling whilst you're running. You need to learn to bring it into your life and recognize the value in it. And not, if somebody told me my neighbor actually, he's a good runner. I don't know how old he is, maybe he's in his 50s, but he was an athlete at school. He said to me the other day that he ran 9K and his legs were like really in pain afterwards. And he said, I hate running. And I'm like, what do you mean you hate running? Like, why do you run 9Ks if you hate running? He said, because I'm good at it. I'm like, that's like, you need to switch your mind, because how can you hate something that you're good at, really? I don't know.
Do you still do yoga and those other things as well?
Yeah, not as much, sadly, just because of circumstances through this pandemic. But yes, I do, and I advocate yoga above all other disciplines for everybody in the world. You can find, what you need in it. Doesn't have to be crazily esoteric. But yeah, I do recommend that, and it will do you well for your older age, which is, if I had to choose one exercise, it would have to be yoga, because I know the benefits. Running, I'm quite fortunate, and I've not really had much in the way of injuries, and my joints seem to be in good health, which I'm really grateful for. But long term, I know yoga's gonna be the thing that keeps me supple and calm when I'm getting older, and I can hopefully do that for pretty much the rest of my life if I practice regularly.
There's this connection, isn't there? Everyone always talks about mind, body, spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've spoken to a lot of people who take their running very, very seriously, and they don't consider themselves spiritual people necessarily. But then when they talk about some of the things that they experience when they're out and they're doing one of their long runs, alone on a country road or up a mountain or something like that, it really does sound like a spiritual experience that they're having, whether or not they recognize it as that. And I think maybe this is one of the things about exercise, especially these kind of more solitary exercises. There is a kind of connection between our physical selves and the things that are going on underneath as well.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When you're out running, yeah, you get that term being in the flow. That's kind of what you're searching for in a run, because my period of time that it takes for me to get settled into a run varies, and I think there's a big psychological element of running, or to running. So if I'm going for a run that's going to be half an hour, I normally get my breath in sync within 5 minutes. But sometimes if I'm going for a long run, and I call a long run 7 miles for now, it might take me half an hour, and I'm just like, I can't, know that I'm not quite fully in rhythm. But once you are, and then you forget about everything. You don't, stop thinking about that. But it does vary, yeah. I don't know if that will connect with people, because unless they are runners, there's, probably sounds a bit weird. But yeah, it can take time to get into it in terms of your breath and how relaxed you feel.
When you were out, was it 8 hours you were running for when you did your 40 miles?
Yeah.
And were you in kind of flow state the whole time, or were you just kind of
No way. No way. I'd be interested to know, because I don't do much research on other runners, so I should definitely listen to your podcast with your ultra runner. No, that's a whole game, full running that length of time, and especially if it's the first time, I suppose. It started off well, and then I think around 19 miles to 22 miles, I was struggling a lot. psychologically think, just not enjoying it. Actually, I felt a bit, my stomach was churning a bit at that point, felt very uncomfortable. And yeah, because you get the physical aspects, obviously, of running when you run long distance, and it's not all joy. Um, but yeah, I just felt, God, this is, blah. Don't, I'm not enjoying it. But I got through that. Um, and then I got to 30 miles, and then I thought, you know what? If you got 30 miles, you're going to do this, and didn't really worry at all then. But I do, you eat little bits along the way. I walk a bit here and there. There's no way I could have ran 40 miles without stopping. Um, I don't know how the people that run in that capacity do it, because I do get a mental thing of having to stop every now and again. And it's not because I'm tired, it's because sometimes I think it's I get bored and I go, oh, or I don't know what it is. I haven't got to the bottom of why I do that. Um,
Yeah, I did a run once. I think it was only a 10K or something like that, and it was out and back, and I got to a point where my body just stopped, and
yeah,
it was like that. I still had plenty of sort of gas in the tank, and I could have kept going. My legs were fine. I was feeling fine, but it's like I'd gone out, I'd come back, and I was thinking about kind of going a little bit further, and my body said, "No, we don't. No, not going to now. I'm bored of this now."
that's it. It's
And
like it,
it's very strange. Yeah,
and
it's like a shutdown.
and especially if I've said to myself, don't stop. Like, I can't recall if it would have been again in this training. I'm sure it happened, but it happened worse when I was training for the marathon. And I'd be saying to myself, don't stop, don't stop. And then I just stop. And I'm like, I used to get really annoyed with myself. But I've learned not to get annoyed with myself, because like, at the end of the day, I'm running far enough and this is okay. And you're going to start running again in like 30 seconds. But it's just, I don't know, a need at the time.
How long did it take you to build up to sort of the marathon distance from kind of not doing that distance and then up to the ultra marathon?
I trained about the same time for both events, about 16 weeks. Excuse me. Yeah, about 16 weeks following a plan. And I did the same plan for this ultra marathon than I did for the marathon. I didn't train any longer distance. So I think the longest run I did was about 22 miles before I did the ultra.
Wow.
That's what you don't kind of comprehend, or maybe people do, I didn't. When I signed up for that first marathon, I was just thinking of this 26-mile thing. And you don't realise that you're going to run a good 6 half marathons during your training, and then build it up even more than that. So I'm like, okay. Because my initial idea was to run a half marathon back then. And someone said to me, he was a runner, and he said, if you run a half a marathon, you want to do a whole one. So then I thought, well, I might as well just do a whole one then, because there's no point doing the half and then going, well, I'll do the whole. But yeah, then you end up running loads of half marathons anyway. So
I mean, you must have spoken to other runners. Have they all had kind of similar kind of mental journeys to you like that?
I met a guy actually at a running club, because I've always been a solo runner, and it's just recently, maybe because of the pandemic, maybe because I've had enough of my own company, that I thought, okay, it'd be quite nice to run with some other people. So I haven't joined a running club, but there's a running club that goes from a pub not far from here once a week, and I've been there several times. And there was a guy there recently who ran, or was about to run the London Marathon. Now he's run the London Marathon, and he just sounded way more G'd up in his. He was really buoyant about doing it, and then he was really in high spirits afterwards as well. I think he had a good run, and he seemed to. I don't know if he suffered any worries, but he didn't seem to. He just seemed to be like, yeah, just a thing that he did. So I don't know if
Do you,
everyone the same. Sorry.
do you get a kind of sense of achievement at the end, or are you just like, yep, done that now, time to move on to the next thing?
No, definitely get a sense of achievement. Yeah, it's a good, it's a really good buzz, and I can't remember what I felt like after that first marathon, but yeah, the ultra marathon definitely a couple of weeks. But what's more straight or not strange, but because you if you do these events, I think most people don't keep thinking about it and thinking, oh yeah, I'm great, I did this. So what? But other people will say to you, oh my god, you ran that, and then you
Yeah.
remember, oh yeah, yeah, I did, yeah, and then you're like, okay, maybe it is quite unusual. But yeah, when I don't know, for me, I was just training, and yeah, I knew it was a big number, but I also know that there's lots of people in the world that run further and run more, like that guy that's done 7 marathons in a row. I don't think I'll ever want to do that or make that something I want to achieve.
Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting. I need to stop saying that, but because I'm kind of on a mission. Because I've always had this thing where it's like I've done lots of things, but I've never done them really, really well. And I did the London Marathon a few years back, um, and I did it in a very, very slow time. And I kind of thought to myself, there I am again. It's like, and
mhm.
I've got this kind of feeling like if I'm not trying, then I'm not really failing when I put in a bad performance. So yeah, so now I'm on a mission to actually try, and I'm going to try and do a really good time.
Or bacon, really.
Sorry, say that again.
Saving your bacon, you're protecting yourself by not, what you're saying, not trying.
Yeah, yeah.
Still ran a marathon. So why not run it in a, I don't know what your time was, but why not, if you feel like you didn't run it at your best potential, then why not?
Well,
You know,
exactly. So now that's what my goal is. Now I'm trying to run it, and so, and this is the fascinating part about human psychology. I think it's like I've always kind of had this kind of benchmark of 4 hours being the time. You know, if you're slower than 4 hours, it's okay, but if you're faster than 4 hours, then that's a really good time. So I'm aiming for like faster than 4 hours. But the more I get into this kind of world of running, the more the kind of bar gets set higher because there are people doing it in 3 hours, and there are people doing it in, there's someone just did it in under 2 hours. That's unofficial, I think.
yeah, but they are people, aren't they, that are really either natural runners or they've done it often, or they're young. They're going to be younger than us, aren't they?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are people my age doing, 3 hour marathons. Um, but I think the point I'm sort of getting at is that we have to choose what our benchmark is for what is good enough. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how do you decide what's good and what's not good?
I mean, what I'd say, which isn't responding exactly to what you're saying, is if you set that benchmark at 4 hours, then you also need to put in place something that says it's okay if you don't achieve that, because the worst thing you could do is run a marathon, say you did it in 4 hours and 2 minutes, and then be really annoyed with yourself because that would be so counterproductive to what you've just achieved, which is, would have been a great run. And I think I'm quite kind to myself in that way. I'm not kind to myself in that I'm like, okay, you can do it in whatever time you like. But if I did it in a longer time than I'd hoped, I would have trained myself to go, that's okay because that's all you could do on that day. Because no way would I want to detract from all the effort I've put into the training. And, you got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken off a time limit on it, so I've not said I'm going to run a marathon in under 4 hours by next year. I mean, if it's next year, that's great. If it's the year after, it doesn't matter. But I'm just going to keep training. I'm going to keep going until I hit that goal,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to go and run 7 marathons in 7 days across the Sahara. You know,
Okay, I look
but
forward to
but I think it's like proving a point almost. And I mean, do you feel like you're proving a point with this? Every 2 years, you're coming up with another challenge. You know.
that's just a circumstantial thing. But now that it's become a thing, which I didn't plan, I think I probably would be looking at doing something. Um, but I don't have anything in mind that I mean, I think I said to you that my son wants to do a triathlon and he asked me if I'd do it with him, but I know he hasn't done anything more about the investigating how we do this. And I got my front wheel nicked off my bike today.
Yeah, so you posted on Instagram they stole your wheel, but they left another wheel.
I have no idea, and because I had to come home to eat and do this podcast, I've left the wheel in a slightly precarious place outside my work, and I'm hoping it'll be there in the morning, and I'll just see if it does fit, which would be really bizarre because I don't understand. There looked like there was nothing wrong with that wheel, and yet my wheel had gone and that one was there.
I've heard about people breaking into people's houses, making toast, and then tidying up, but not stealing anything.
Well, what's wrong with this tire is what I want to know. It's with this wheel. It's I don't know, very odd.
Very odd.
Yeah.
So I mean, so that rules out the triathlon. Then you won't be riding your bike.
Yeah, for now. I mean, that bike's over 20 years. I've had it for like 20 odd years, so I kind of am in line for a new bike, but I'll start with that wheel, I suppose.
Yeah, one wheel at a time. I knew someone who always wanted a motorbike, and they started by buying the helmet.
No way.
And then saved up for the next 5 years to get their motorbike. But
that was the incentive.
yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
But back onto your personal goals here, because we've got to keep this got to keep this ship on course.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there an itch that comes up every 2 years? Do you think that there is some gap you're trying to fill by doing these challenges that pops up, like a 2-year itch that needs scratching?
They don't pop up. They come about, I'd say, because the first marathon, like I said, was, I don't know, I wanted to do a half, it became a whole, and that was a thing. Boxing I got into by accident, which sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And then I ended up having a fight, which I won. So I'm undefeated.
Fantastic.
And I probably won't ever have another fight. I don't know. And then the run thing, I suppose because the boxing had calmed down and I already knew that I had this thought that maybe I'd do that long run one day. And I started training, last January, thinking I'd be doing it in May last year. And then because I'd signed up, when it got postponed and then cancelled, I kept getting emails. We'll put you forward. If you want to opt out, you can. And I just thought, well, I better do it now. I'm already signed up. So I wasn't probably feeling it when I started the training this year. I was like, oh God, that's a long way. But yeah, you do it. I don't know where I found the time to do the training. That's the other thing. So your guy who runs regularly, I think professionally, you'd have to get paid for it because I don't know how people can find the time to train otherwise. It's a big undertaking.
Well, it means hours and hours of training, pretty much, every day almost.
Yep. Yeah. Well, rest is very important too, but at the weekends, once you're building up your miles, I think, when was I running? I was running on Saturdays this time for long runs, and it is your whole day because you get up knowing that you're going to go running, whether I did it first thing or not, which I generally didn't. And then you come back, you need to eat and have a wash, and then you're a bit knackered. So that's kind of your day revolving around the run. It is a big commitment, but it's good. It's a nice thing to know you've done or that you can do. Like going back to the analogy thing, you think if you can achieve that, that you're capable of doing things that take a lot of grit. And it just makes you stronger in the mind, I think.
I think that's what I'm trying to prove with this 4-hour thing. It's this kind of sense of I've always tried things, but I've never done them well. So if I can do this, then it means that I am capable of doing something really well, you know what I mean, and making it happen.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, like, I've often thought about these kind of ultra marathon runners who go out, like yourself, even, you know, they go out and they do these incredible feats of endurance. And I always kind of think, are you running towards something or are you running away from something? You know, what's it
Hmm.
all about?
Good point, because a friend of mine who's very antagonistic, he said to me years ago when I was running regularly, "What are you running away from?" And I said to him, "I'm not running away from something. I'm running towards something." So maybe it's the same as the glass half full thing. I certainly don't feel running for me is a running away from. It's a enhancement to my the bigger picture of my life, I think.
Do you think
Uh,
it brings there are things that you kind of like parallels that you can take from those long hours on, you know, in your running shoes that you can apply to other areas of your life? You know, you've said, you know, I'm doing these things. It makes me understand I'm capable of doing things that require grit. And
yeah.
do you find you can kind of bring that grit to other situations in your life?
Yeah, I do. Personally, I do. I can't speak for anyone else, but yeah, I take on challenges pretty well, and I think running helps with that because you know you have to push yourself. You have to for running. I mean, you have to oh, like you're saying about yourself that you do things but you don't do them well, which is probably being a bit unfair on yourself. But you know when you run regularly, you know whether you're running to your full potential or not, or if you're being a bit lazy or a bit kind to yourself. And in fact, that's another reason for joining a running club. I don't know if you've thought of that because that pub group they set off at three different with three different times for doing a 5k. It's always 5k. um, and I run faster than I would run a 5k on my own when I'm in that group because you feel like you're part of something and you have to keep up, I suppose. And I am, you know, I think I am always I'm in the middle. I do the middle run, but I'm kind of always come first, which is weird. And kind of, it's a bit annoying because I've gone there to run with people, but I can't help but run at a pace I want to run at. I'm not very good at holding back just to have a sociable run. Um, but I have done that a couple of times lately. There was a lady who was struggling, so I just said, "Look, I'll run with you," and that was really nice as well. And I did enjoy that. But I haven't done that before because I've always been running on my own. So I need to learn to run with other people.
I did go to a running club once, and the one thing I like about running, like you say, is something you can do on your own. And in school, I was never very good at sports. Always got picked last in PE, you know, when they're picking out teams and stuff, and it was bad for my confidence. And my dad tried to get me into judo,
Oh
and
gosh.
I went to a judo club once, and there was this kid, a bit older than me, and he was clearly very good, and just started doing kind of showing off how good, how high he could kick and stuff like that. And I was just very intimidated and never went back. And there was a similar sense in the running club, and it was you basically run laps, and then but you get faster every lap,
Hmm.
and eventually, you know, you kind of drop out until there's one person left, and he's just sprinting around like a kind of machine.
Oh gosh.
And yeah, it just made me feel very inadequate, and so I didn't go back.
Okay, you definitely went to the wrong running club. Because when I said that's what I meant when I said about this running club, it isn't a traditional running club in that it's not about competition or time. It's about
Yeah,
socializing. They started this club during the it couldn't have been during the first lockdown, but just after that, when people were allowed back out to be sociable, and you know you're outside, but you can meet people,
yeah,
and yeah, that's how it began. So it really is friendly, and yeah, you know, there are these three different times, which is precisely why. So that nobody feels that they're on their own, and that always make sure that you're not on your own. You know, there's
yeah.
someone keeping an eye on you with each group, and it's all voluntary. People just turn up and run together. So
Oh, that's
maybe
nice.
friendlier group or start your own group, because I'm about to move home to somewhere that I don't know at all, and I've thought, if I can't find, if there's no real running activity with other people, then I might start one, and that'll be a way to meet people.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
yeah,
Because when I started running again, it was about May last year. It was just a couple of months after the first lockdown,
mhm.
and I would get up at 5:30 in the morning, go up to the local park because it was the only time I could get when my little girl wasn't awake. It was just kind of she would wake up at 7, so I'd make the most of those
Yeah.
early hours. And I would run around the park, and it's only a little park, but occasionally I would see these two kind of older ladies who would
Mhm.
also be running around the park. They'd sort of come and start running around the park, and we'd give each other a kind of, a familiar wave and sort of say hello. But it did sort of cross my mind to kind of maybe start a little local group of, for people who want to get a little bit fitter or lose a little bit of weight or something like that. Just a bit of friendly activity once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's really nice. And it's, yeah, certainly a way of just, yeah, being a bit sociable now that we, realise the importance of social interaction. It's a nice thing to do. Um,
In terms of, because you've say you've been a runner for a very, very long time. In terms of setting goals, how important has that been for you in terms of kind of identity, self-esteem, that sort of thing?
do you mean setting goals as in these massive runs, or do you mean just in general running?
Just in general running, because I mean, I've always had this goal of the marathon, but to get there, I set myself a goal of running 5K, and then
Uh,
it was 10K and that kind of thing.
I don't set goals very often in terms of running for myself, but I do little patterns. I saw it in a diary actually. I think I was looking back for something, a date, and I did this thing where I'd run. I think it was throughout a week. Oh, I did a lot of running during the first lockdown on my own, and I think it was from then. And so, say I went from Monday to Friday, and I did 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes. So each day I did a bit more. And it's just to make it more interesting and more challenging. It's not a goal as such, but it's I like messing around with times and just seeing what I can do. And then I did. I don't know if you saw it. I
Is
did.
it your doorstep challenges?
It was called run bys, where I just, because this is during the first lockdown and you weren't allowed to see anyone, and I was at home on my own a lot of the time. And so what I did was I made little videos when I ran past friends' houses and just like shouted hello to them and took a picture, and then I'd post it on Instagram later. And I never saw anybody that I knew. Even at one friend, I ran 5 miles to see, so obviously I had to run 5 miles back as well. And she had her window open. I even shouted her name, and it's like, no, I don't. I think she might have been in the back garden because she's got a dog. And it was like I never, I thought I might have seen one person, but I didn't. It was
Didn't you
yeah.
didn't you tell them you were going to be running past at some point?
That was all part of the fun for me. It was like, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'll find out later. And all but one friend is on Instagram, so they did all see it, and I just
Yeah,
told separately that no,
fantastic.
yeah. Plus, we weren't supposed to be seeing anyone then, so it was just like, you know, say hello, look like a mad woman running down the road, shouting to a window, and
Well, it's funny. I saw where I live, you see a lot of runners, and they're always kind of like the fit-looking people, and they've got the gear and all this kind of stuff. But then when lockdown happened, I started seeing runners who they didn't look like they'd been running before, but it was
okay,
like suddenly the structure of their lives had been taken away from them,
yeah,
and they were kind of set with this kind of, what am I going to do with my time now? And so there were people all shapes and sizes out jogging, and I thought
yeah.
this is brilliant.
A lot of running, a lot of walking going on, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you I'm sure you did pick up on it. Runners were getting quite a hard time when people were at their most paranoid stage of this pandemic, and because of the breathing
Yeah.
and crossing them on the pavement, and yeah, it got a bit heated in the talk about runners. I heard a lot of comments. Oh, I hate runners, and I was like, oh gosh, same as cyclists or motorists. Some of them do things well and some of them don't do things so well, but yeah.
Yeah. I find as a kind of male runner, I'm in a very privileged position that I can go out sort of after dark or before the sun comes up. But also, I'm very mindful of other people. Sort of, you don't necessarily hear a runner coming up behind you,
No.
especially if you're of a nervous disposition.
Hmm.
So I always try and give people a wide berth. I keep, especially when I'm going past old people, I kind of hold my breath a little bit, so I'm not sort of,
I did a lot of holding my breath during that first period for
yeah,
sure.
just out of respect, really, more than anything else.
But it is annoying when you have to stop as a runner, but you just have to do it sometimes because it's not fair on the other people that aren't running and yeah, trying to get somewhere.
I mean, I'm very lucky. Living in the countryside, I just run down the lanes and everything like that. So I never have to stop other than to catch my breath, really, and to that kind of thing. But I mean, for you, how important is running as a part of your life? You say it's pretty vital, but why do you think that is?
It become I think it becomes more vital the more you do it because when I trained for that marathon, the first one, um, I didn't run for quite a long time afterwards, and it wasn't a plan. I didn't think I'd stop running, and I don't know, I can't tell you now because it was quite a while back, but I just didn't really run much for quite some time. And then, then I kind of probably realised at some point, oh, I haven't been running, and then got back into a bit. So, yes, it's important, but as long as I'm doing some exercise during a week, um, I'm okay if I haven't run. But I do, in an ideal world, I'd run 3 times a week, which is what I thought I'd do after this ultra marathon. And I think I've managed twice a week, nearly every week. But I haven't managed the magic 3 because I thought I'd do 2 small runs in the week and a longer run at the weekend. But time, things come up and you just don't prioritize it, which is maybe why I like these bigger challenges because then I know I need to prioritize it if I want to get the most out of it.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I can only do 2 runs at the week just because of the way my schedule is with
yeah,
the commute into the office and stuff like that. But I try and go to the gym every day and do something. It's almost like I'm taking a little bit of my own life back, taking a little bit of ownership of my time in a way.
yeah. I mean, that's amazing because I'm doing less exercise than I've done in years at the moment, just because I've got a full time work schedule plus the other freelance work that I try to do on top, and yeah, and life. So it is hard to fit it in. And before the pandemic, I was doing a lot. I was teaching yoga 4 times a week then, and probably attending classes 3 times a week and running once or twice a week. So it was consistent and um, but yeah, I think fortunately because I've done a certain amount of exercise for a long time, I stay quite fit for quite a while, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, that's
Um,
good.
I can, yeah, top it up quite quickly, but yeah, I'd like to do more again. And once I've moved, I think I'll really make that a priority to get it back into some more regular fashion.
So in terms of, so say someone who's listening to this wanted to do something ultra, whether that's an ultra marathon or just take their career to the next level or some massive thing that they don't think they're quite capable of. How would you go about? What kind of advice would you give them to get started?
I would say start small, because I mean, I know there are people out there that will have a huge ambition and will go for it and put everything in. But I do find I observe a lot of, that's my favourite pastime since childhood, observation. And I do think that people that go for those high goals come down more than if they just chip away and improve slowly and achieve something probably equally as big, maybe the same goal, but over a longer period of time. They see the slow build up, and then it's easier to maintain a good level of whatever it is, whether it's work or sports, rather than going to the highs and then the lows. It's, I have thought in the past that maybe I'm too kind to myself when it comes to running, for instance, long distance running. But then I look at my time and my age and I think, do you know what? You're not that bad anyway. So I don't think I don't try, because,
Yeah.
well, I know I do try, but I do often think I could try a bit harder. So if I did another marathon, which I think I might, I think I'd bring someone else on board to push me, because I know it's so much harder to gauge yourself. And when someone's telling you what to do, you do it, like in that sports scenario. It's like if you go to a class and you're told to do 20 reps, I'll always do the 20 reps. I won't give up at 15 because someone's there, and I'll do it. But if I'm on my own, I might just slow down a bit.
Yeah.
I might take it a bit easier. So yeah, get people involved and on your side, and believe in yourself, and chip away. Don't get disheartened, because unfortunately with running, you can pick up injuries quite easily. And I haven't been afflicted with anything major, but I actually had my first physio last year during lockdown, because I blimmin' fell over whilst running. And that was because I was trying to avoid people. And I went off of the path and then did some crazy jump back onto the path. I was being a bit of an idiot on my own, and just did a roll and injured my Achilles, and to a physio. And I was like, well, that was rather stupid. But yeah, so you got to be careful, because there are things that can happen to your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and be willing to be, running long distance is not a pretty thing. So you've got to be someone who doesn't mind, what can I say?
Manky feet, beaten up feet.
Manky feet, this isn't from my own experience, but I've heard chafing horror stories. You've got to, you've got to be willing to take a bit of the rough with a long running.
Yeah. Kieran, who I spoke to, who's on the previous podcast, he was saying there was a point where he was running through the Sahara Desert, and I can't remember how far he'd gone, but he was crying and puking at the same time whilst running.
Oh, geez. Yeah, see, that's another level. That really is another level.
Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not pretty.
No, it's not. But that's that's where he's probably learned a lot. And in fact, the guy Dwayne, his name is, who recommended I tried this ultra marathon, he told me back when he suggested it that you'll learn a lot about yourself, like doing this kind of distance. Because you do get annoyed with yourself and you get fed up. It can vary. I think that's the other thing to remember when you're training, is you might have a good day, or you might have lots of good days and be really in the swing of it, and then you'll have a bad day, and you've got to just go with that and accept it, that some runs are better than other runs, which could be down to a lot of things, sleep and what you've been doing, what's going on in your life. So yeah,
I think you need those, though. I remember when I was a photographer as well, I would do a series of photo shoots, one after another, and they'd just be amazing. The images that came out were just fantastic, and I'd be really pleased with myself, and I'd be there thinking, I am the world's best photographer. but then I would crash and burn. The next one, I would just completely cock it up. And just the images, and I'd be saying to the client, "I'm really sorry, I've messed up here," this kind of thing. But I think, I think it's just important to kind of, like you say, be kind to yourself, because it's that consistency, isn't it? You might run two good runs and one bad one, but if you run 10 runs, that's only two bad ones and then 8 good ones or whatever in it.
Definitely. And I mean, I'd hope that once you've run enough, a fair amount, you get to understand those things and you don't, not as hard on yourself, because I think you need to enjoy it. It's, that's what, when I was saying about my neighbour earlier, I'm like, I couldn't imagine running if I hated it. I wouldn't see the point. I've never seen the point in doing things you hate, really, unless you absolutely have no choice. But you've got a choice to go running or not. So yeah, you can learn. I think you can learn to like it, even if it's by the results that you see.
From what I've heard about kind of some of these really hardcore runners, they really get to know themselves very well. They get to know themselves emotionally. They get to know themselves physically. They know that they might start, their legs might start hurting, but they've still got another 20 miles left in them. They might know that they're getting grumpy, and that means that they're probably hungry
to eat. Yeah,
it's stuff like that. And it's just I think the more you kind of do push yourself into these new experiences, whether it's running, whether it's a career change, learning, take up a new hobby, whatever it is, to be aware that you're learning about yourself at the same time, and that can become a tool to getting better.
I agree. No, you do learn a lot about yourself and your ability. I can kind of judge when I've run 3 miles, or how long I've been running, because I've done it a lot of times. So you're like, okay, that's probably 20 minutes. I'll do a bit more, and then nail whatever it was you're trying to do, 3 miles or something. Yeah, it's a good discipline for discovery, I think.
Yeah. Fantastic. Cool. Well, I will wrap it up there, because we've gone on for about an hour or so, but thank you for that. And you are obviously an excellent photographer as well. So if people want to check out your photography, where can they find you?
Oh, you can look up my name, which is Amanda Eatwell, because I don't think there are many of us around. So either that.com or the same on Instagram, Amanda Eatwell.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to go out and I'm doing the Reading Half Marathon this coming weekend. Wow. But when this is broadcast, it will have been 2 weeks ago. So hopefully I've done a really good time and I'm very happy with myself. But we'll see. We'll find out soon. But I mean, that's really inspiring, just to know that you can go a bit further. You can go a bit further. You just need to have faith that you can. And I think that's
chip away one step at a time.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, I shall leave it there. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Chris.
So there we are. That idea of pushing beyond what's comfortable and doing gritty things so that we can gain the grit to face challenges in other parts of our life is really quite motivating and inspiring. And perhaps this might encourage us all to go a bit ultra in our lives. It doesn't need to be running, it could be anything. Just think what you're capable of. Thanks to Amanda for her time, and if you want to find out more about her and her photography, head over to www.amandaeatwell.com, spelt as it sounds. And if you enjoyed this and would like to hear more, you can find us wherever you find your podcasts or at conversationsonliving.com. And don't forget to rate, review and subscribe. Next week, we'll be talking to international publicist Karen Black about what it takes to step into the light and raise our public profile, and how we can find the courage to tell our stories. And in the meantime, have a lovely day.